The following Let's Play has been rated perfectly fine to watch. Any attempts to break the game are for entertainment value only. However, if any typos happen to be found, Hello everyone! Welcome back to this game. Well, it's a beautiful day here in Real Town, USA, and I decided to take the opportunity to step away from Jester's Hunt on RPG Maker 1 and move on to Jester's Hunt on RPG Maker 2. Don't get too excited though, what I'm about to show you is barely started, and in fact it probably won't ever finish. And also, it's something that I've shown you guys before. It is Jester's Hunt 3D, Lights, Camera, Accidents. More specifically, it's the debug. Why is it so hard to remember that word? It is the debug room of Jester's Hunt 3D Lights, Camera, Accidents. Now, you might be wondering, or you might not be wondering. I'm just assuming because I always assume you might be wondering. But anyway, I'm assuming you might be wondering, if I already showed this off once before, why am I showing it off again? Well, you know how I did Jester's Hunt 5 years ago, and then I'm doing it again now to see how far along I've come? Well, I showed off the debug room 5 years ago. And because it's Jester's Hunt, it's relevant. So let's go ahead and start this up and see what we got here. We are in the ground, that's what we got here. Let me step in the ground, there we go. Now we can see Mr. Knight's face. And now we can see Mr. Knight's tail. Mr. Knight has a tail. Why? Well, it's because in RPG Maker 2, you do not have a monkey character model. Which is unfortunate because I wanted to bring back Monkey. So, it turns out that RPG Maker 2 does have a baby character model. And if you recolor the baby character model just right, it looks like a monkey. Of course, it doesn't have a tail, and so I wound up making a tail in the visual effects editor in order to, well, give Monkey a tail. But instead I gave Mr. Knight a tail for testing purposes. Cool. In fact, just real quick, I decided to swap out Mr. Knight for Monkey, and you can see that, yep, this is what we got. A baby colored as a monkey with a tail made in the visual effects editor. I say the effect is pretty good. Also, by now, you've probably noticed the song that's playing. It is a very simple rendition of the theme from Lucky Woods. I would have improved upon it eventually. Hopefully it doesn't get too annoying for you. It probably will. I'm sorry. Admittedly, trying to create a good song in RPG Maker 2 is pretty difficult because RPG Maker 2 doesn't have a song editor. You kind of have to build a song using the same scripts you use to build, well, all the other eventing. Speaking of inventing, if we come over here, we're going to see a little Jesterling kind of wandering around. He's hiding in the trees. There he is. I'm going to come over here and use Blast on him. And now he's chasing after me. Let me blast him again. And he's still chasing after me. Unfortunately, he doesn't really do anything to me. He just runs circles around me because I never got around to programming any attacks on him. However, I can go ahead and not do that. I can go ahead and talk to this box, and all of a sudden, he's no longer chasing me. So, yay. Over here, we got a group of Mr. Knight clones. The reason why I have those is because I want to find out if I could basically figure out if there's any smart programming to how these guys chase me. As you can tell, there is not. Now then, if I tap the circle button, this happens. And now I can run. Basically what I've got here is I'm triggering run mode. Also, you are annoying me, so let's go ahead and touch this coffin. The coffin basically resets the map. And then we have a barrel. What does the barrel do? It does that. It puts the game in letterbox mode, which would probably look really ugly on modern TVs and or also the YouTube video. So let's not do that. The reason why I have the letterbox mode is because, well, partly because of the title. Lights, Camera, Accidents. Jester's Hunt 3D was going to have a movie theme to it, and there's a lot more to it than that, but I will get to that in a little bit. Before I do, though, let's take a look at this thing here. Well, we can't take a look at this thing here until I show off something else. Camera controls. So normally you can just rotate the camera as much as you want like this, using the top shoulder buttons. Normally you can also use the bottom shoulder buttons to turn the camera. However, using this vehicle trick of mine, I'm actually able to program other buttons to do stuff instead. Whatever buttons I want. For example, if I press L2, this happens. The camera zooms out, which allows me to explain this thing, but since I'm in the middle of a camera explanation, I guess I can't actually explain that thing. So let's go ahead and lower the camera back down, and if I press R2, we go into first person view. That's pretty cool. In fact, let's go ahead and head back down here, go ahead and do run mode, and go into first person view here, and watch this thing. This was just a little random thing that I put it together in the visual effects editor because I don't really know why. I guess I was just kind of goofing off and that's what happened. I guess the idea here is that little spear is bringing up fumes for the smokestack. I don't know why you can't just have fumes travel up the smokestack. I guess it's just high technology because eventually in Jester's Hunt 3D, you would go to Zone's world. Also over here we have a cactus. If we talk to the cactus by pressing triangle button, because that's the talk button in RPG Maker 2, we get this thing. It's for testing the credits, and by the way, every time you press X you use blast. Eventually I would have fixed that. Let's see, how many stuff I can place during the credits. By stuff it means like cutscenes, because for the credits of Jester's Hunt 3D I was planning on having it so that credits would be playing while you were watching cutscenes, the ending cutscenes. Well, the ending has already taken place, and now we're just seeing what's happening after the ending. You know, like how a lot of movies have stuff going on during the credits. We are not going to watch that because it's going to be annoying. Basically, what it would do is it would start playing an RPG Maker 2 song while the Lucky Woods theme is playing. And also, I would be frozen in place while the credits are playing, so yeah. Playing with this would be a really bad idea. Now we are going to go up here. Here we have a token. It doesn't look like much. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the little smiley face on it. I imagine eventually I would have put the smiley face on it. Once again, though, this is a test thing. Bump into it, and we get the little marker that says 50. Because it would have been worth 50 points. I would have had a scoring system in Jester's Hunt 3D. And you would have had like high scores for each level, I guess. I don't know, it probably would have been something like Super Mario 3D World, the high score system in that. Except this is just one player. Might have been something else I could have done with the high score, but otherwise, I don't think there is. By the way, because I can't remember if I said this is the debug room. It's basically the room in which I place a whole bunch of stuff just to test game mechanics and stuff. Over here we have an S token. I don't think the S token would have been anything in Jester's Hunt 3D. It's just a random object I chose for testing purposes. If we bump into it, we get a timer. Also, it turns gold. But we get a timer! I would have actually had a real timer in Jester's Hunt 3D, instead of having random events on the ground that you step on to pretend to have a timer. And if we click this again, the timer freezes in place for a little bit. So, let's go ahead and let that run down. And while that's running down, I'm going to come over here to this block here, and I'm going to talk to the block. We get a random number of 3, and it starts snowing. You can have snow in RPG Maker 2. That's cool. Now while that's going on, we come to the spring pad. Listen to the sound whenever we go up the spring pad. Now, I don't know how well you can hear it, but there's this little jingle that plays as I reach the top of the spring. Reach up here. The reason for that is because, well, for a while I couldn't figure out how to make the music not stop when you use the spring pad. The spring pad made the music stop because the spring pad took priority away from the music. The custom music, rather, has no problem if I'm using default music. So, basically the little jingle at the top was supposed to kind of ease you back into the music after you use the spring pad. And now, since the timer is ticking down, I have extra sounds. That is pretty cool. Alright, I have reset the map so it's not snowing, because that's annoying, and we are going to talk to this vase. And there's the HUD. That is pretty cool. So, the way this is working is, well, it's pretty obvious. Let me move the camera so things are a little bit more visible there. Alright, so right there next to the 3, that little bubble thing with the thing on top of it is supposed to represent Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight has 3 lives. Yeah, Jester Hunt 3D would have actually had lives. The plan would be, if you ran out of lives, you would lose a trophy somewhere. So yeah, don't get a game over. Then of course we have the hearts and crystals. Now, the thing about visual effects in RPG Maker 2 is after you have so many on screen, the game starts to have a bunch of slowdown. Things like get really laggy, which is bad. And so to reduce the amount of objects on screen, the amount of visual effects, I made it so that after like 5 hearts and 5 crystals, it gets to another level of hearts and crystals, which is what you're seeing right now. My hearts are not only full, they're beyond full. I technically have 9 hearts. As far as crystals goes, I only have 2 out of 5. Actually, I don't really have that many hearts and crystals. That's just a placeholder effect, just to make sure it looks nice. And of course, like I said, we have a score that I mentioned this game would have had, and our token counter. Right now, in theory, I have 234 tokens. And if we come back over here to the timer, that would have fit nicely in the middle. And now I'm going to run over here, and we're going to talk to Jester. Now, in the original thing when I did this, I did not talk to Jester. Well, I started to talk to Jester, but I said, no, I don't actually want to show this off because I don't want to, like, show my hand, that sort of thing. But since this probably isn't going to get made, I decided to go ahead and show it to you. By the way, if you're interested in seeing the original thing that I was showing off 5 years ago, I am going to go ahead and provide a link in the description so you can see for yourself how far along I have come in these Let's Plays. Especially, in particular, regarding my original attempt at showing you the debug room. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put a looking back comment on that video just like I do with the rest of my Let's Plays. So, go ahead and check that out if you like. And now we are here. The other visual effects are gone, but the timer is programmed to keep on going, which is good because you would want timers and stuff to be able to move on to other places. Now, I am kind of frozen in place at this moment, so let me see here. Press circle? No. Press Blast? Okay. There we go. Now I can move. And the timer runs out. So now we are in a location that I did not show to you all the original time that I showed off the debug room. We are in Lucky Woods. Yep. So the plan was that upon getting 100% on Jester's Hunt 3D, you would unlock a remake of Jester's Hunt. And this is like a preliminary initial version of Lucky Woods in order to figure out how I wanted to redesign the game. And also because since I already made Jester's Hunt, putting together the remake would be plenty easier than trying to put together a new game. As far as the new game goes, I never actually made anything in the new game. There's more content in the remake than there is in the new game, which is none. Now, this isn't a simple copy-pasting of Lucky Woods either. I actually completely redesigned this place. Starting right here, we have this little billboard of a tree. I was going to, represent each level with a billboard like this. Some big object like this. Would have made things kind of interesting. And we have a rainbow ground because maybe that's the portal? I don't know. Maybe I would have had the portal on the wall or something there. Might just be a placeholder graphic. I'm not entirely sure. Over here we have a barrel which once again makes things widescreen, which we're not going to do. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. Let's make things widescreen, and then I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. Now we have an actual widescreen video of RG Maker 2. Not the best quality, admittedly, but whatever. Alright, so let's go ahead and explore this level, and there's going to be a few places during this level where you might recognize a few landmarks, essentially. So let's go ahead and explore, and I will tell you some more plans that I had with Jester's Hunt 3D. Now, I can't really tell you a whole lot of plans because I can't remember most of my plans, but I can tell you some story details that I was considering. Like the earliest plans was having it would have been like a carbon copy of Banjo-Tooie. You would have gone through this mountain area before finally reaching the location where Jester is hiding for the final battle. Obviously, Jester would have been the bad guy again. Also, I just used Bushwhack. Eventually, I would have made it look better. Another idea, and the reason why the file name is called Lights Camera Accidents, was because I had decided that maybe for the sequel, Jester's Hunt would acquire a movie studio, and Jester would have forced Mr. Knight to take part in the movies. Meanwhile, there's the matter of Mr. Knight's wife, Princess Laura, or Princess Gwaelin. Actually, no, it would have been Princess Laura Gwaelin, the princess that you rescued from Dragon Warrior 1. Mr. Knight would have just married her, and for their honeymoon, they would have went to the movie theater, where Princess Laura Gwaelin would have gotten kidnapped again, and Mr. Knight would have tried chasing her and her captor to Jester's movie studio, where antics ensue. Also, as I mentioned before, Princess Laura Gwaelin would have been a playable character. There would have been a gag early on where it's let's see here, do I rescue my wife or do I just leave? Because as a reminder, Mr. Knight is very much afraid of clowns and really doesn't like Jester. Now, if I actually did make Jester's Hunt 3D, I would completely scrap the movie theater or the movie studio idea because hi. I would scrap the idea because it would have required a whole bunch of movie references that not everyone is going to get, and that would just be a bad idea. Now, before I tell you more about Jester's Hunt 3D, I am going to talk to Jester. First off, there's a hole here. This is Earthrotter's hole. You can kind of tell because it's kind of rotting over here. I don't actually have Earthrotter's lair programmed or inserted in any way, so instead we just talk to Jester, who takes us to the other side of Lucky Woods. Just like originally, Lucky Woods is split in half, this time by a river. In fact, this part is particularly interesting. Let me go ahead and get the letterboxing again. There we go. This is particularly interesting because, like I said, this is not going to be, was not going to be a carbon copy of Lucky Woods. We have a new section here. We have a sawmill. In fact, if we go in here, well, the sawmill's interior hasn't exactly been created yet, but we can at least go ahead and go into first-person view in order to look at the rollers that would bring in the logs that would come from up the river. Would have been pretty interesting in here. Would have been like a new objective, probably a new trophy, possibly. And of course, the logs would be flowing from up the river like here. By the way, I would like to point out the draw distance of RPG Maker 2. It sucks. It's because RPG Maker 2 is so complicated and so power hungry that if the draw distance was better than this, it would make the game lag probably. So as far as which view you would want to have, whether to go with this view or this view, it would come down to personal preference, whether you want to be able to see a long distance away, or you want to not have that ugliness that is the edge of the world. By the way, you'll probably notice that there's a bunch of lily pads floating in the air. Well, they're not actually floating in the air. The lily pads are in this here lake. The reason why some of them appear is because they are all one building. They are a building with a few lily pad textures. And so if I step right here, they all disappear because the building is completely off the map. That doesn't work with everything though. If we come up a little further here, we are going to see some stalagmites sitting over there. In actuality, I am using them as tree stumps. Now these stalagmites are actually visual effects, and visual effects don't care how far off the screen they are. The reason why I am using visual effects for tree stumps is because even though RPG Maker 2 does have tree stumps, the tree stumps are really big. They're we'll say this big as this here tree. And that just won't do. Also, if we come over here, we are coming across the Bushwhack maze, where you could only use Bushwhack 6 times. Not entirely sure where the trophy would have been, or the question token. Would have been in here somewhere, though. Also, we gotta have the Atari logo, or the Atari logo wannabe. Now, as for Jester's Hunt 3D, and the new plot, and new objectives, new gameplay, I'm really not sure if I want to get into super detail about that, because you never know, I might actually make the sequel to Jester's Hunt. It won't necessarily be on RPG Maker 2, maybe it'll be on RPG Maker VX Ace, who knows. So I don't want to delve into too much detail. The reason why I can get away with telling bits of the story is because I changed my mind and those bits of story aren't actually going to happen. Definitely not going to have the movie studio, definitely not going to be traveling up a mountain, and definitely, most certainly, we are not going to have any connection with the Dragon Quest series. Now, will I actually have a remake in the Jester's Hunt sequel if I make it? I don't know. I've already said before how interested I am in making a remake, and if I made a remake, it would probably be on RPG Maker 1, just for the sake of challenge. Also, there's Jester again. We'll talk to him last. And up here, this is where the minigame would have taken place, where you have to cut down a certain amount of trees in a certain amount of time for the lumberjack. I think after helping the lumberjack, he would have returned to the sawmill. Whether he would have served any purpose at the sawmill, I can't remember. And if we bypass Jester, we would come to the place where we would find Monkey, and we would have had to guide Monkey through here. Once again, it would have been an enemy gauntlet, nothing too fancy. Except for this part. I actually included a little shortcut here, if you wanted to avoid some of the enemies over here, and then the exit would have been right here, and there's no tree here. So we can just get back to the start of the level where these tokens are again. Since this tree isn't here anymore, I'm assuming it is exactly the same situation as it is in the original Jester's Hunt, where not only is the forest divided in two, but technically speaking, the forest isn't actually all one forest. We are technically on a different map than when we started. In RPG Maker 2, that's a lot easier because you can actually take the ground and reuse it on multiple maps, whereas in RPG Maker 1, you have to actually recreate the ground. By the way, there was one other plan I had for Jester's Hunt 3D that I can go ahead and divulge. After getting 100% in Jester's Hunt Remake, you could actually go into this racing game, like an on-foot racing game. Like, how many of you are familiar with Mad Dash Racing on Xbox, the original Xbox? It would have been kinda, sorta something like that, where you would have different characters that you could play as. Mr. Knight and Princess Laura Gwalin, for example, would be playable. Jester would have also been playable, and oh, by the way, Jester would have had a new girlfriend. And she would have been playable. Oh yeah, I just remembered what it was I was planning to do instead of the movie studio idea. I said I wasn't going to divulge info on that because I didn't want to spoil anything I might actually decide to do, but I will say this. I was actually planning on, instead of Mr. Knight being the playable character, we would have a new playable character. The game would have kind of started with Jester going to Mr. Knight's castle to bug him again, and Mr. Knight would have slammed the door in Jester's face, and so Jester would wind up going after somebody else to bug. I won't really say who he would have bugged. It would have been a brand new character, of course. And if I could have implemented it, I probably would have turned it into an actual platformer, because at some point in the past some odd years, I figured out how to kinda sorta make RPG Maker 2 with a platformer engine in RPG Maker 2. If that makes sense. I figured out how to make it so you can have actual platforming in RPG Maker 2. Sorta. I never got around to figuring out how you can make it so that you can hop onto floating platforms, but I was able to at least make it so you can jump. And better than in SD Paradise. If you can't remember, SD Paradise was a game I let's played long time ago, and it was a 2D platform, but you basically... The way that game did platforming was you had a whole bunch of events on the ground, and anytime you pressed the check button, the event you're standing on would send you on a predetermined jumping path. Whereas the engine I was creating would let you actually jump anywhere without having to talk to events lined on the ground. And it would actually require skill in order to make sure you landed on a platform and, well, not a bottomless pit, which you can't land on, because it's bottomless. Alright, so what happens if we talk to Jester here? He just sends you back to the start of the forest, so there's no way to get back to the debug room. That is slightly sad, but oh well. Anyway, that is all I can think of as far as Jester's Hunt 3D and the Jester's Hunt Remake goes. If there's anything else that I've forgotten to mention, I really want to say oh well, but in actuality it would make me sad. So instead, maybe I'll throw in some correctional quips if I forgot something. Now, we may be done with my attempt at a Jester's Hunt remake, but this isn't the only attempt at a Jester's Hunt remake. Next time, in the Season 6 finale, I am going to show you a much more playable version of a Jester's Hunt remake. I'll see you then.